It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new writer to talk about their books and their work. This morning, we are pleased to have with us Cheryl K. Johnson. Cheryl is a researcher by profession, but a longtime food and fitness enthusiast at heart. She thinks of herself as just an ordinary person trying to cut through the clutter of misleading wellness advice. Cheryl is relentless about finding nutrition and healthy lifestyle information that steers the conversation back to choices that are practical and enjoyable. Based on what's worked for her and others over the years and the discipline and attitude for more than 10 years of boxing training. Okay, we're going to talk about that. She's created a no excuse common sense practice for a more satisfying life built on better food and better ways to use your time during your workday lunch break. It's a simple, flexible solution called Box Lunch Lifestyle. Okay, Cheryl, is it really that easy?
It really is. We make it hard, but it doesn't have to be that hard.
Well, this is such an interesting concept, and you kind of have such an interesting background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the boxing first, and then we'll talk about where the concept of the lunch came up.
Right. So I found, I feel like I found the real me in the most unlikely place imaginable, in a boxing gym. Nobody is more surprised about this than me, honestly, that I don't come from a family that's particularly interested in sports. When I started boxing, I didn't really know anything about the sport and had only seen people like Muhammad Ali on late night talk shows. But by taking a chance on this quirky interest that I didn't understand, it helped me develop the kind of confidence I needed to feel like the real me in other places, which, you know, at one point in my life was in a job that I didn't love. So what I wanted to do is find a way to help other people see, how those things that we can't ignore, those things that we're drawn to, like how do those help us be our best selves? And how do we do the other things that we need to support ourselves with basic care, like not eating, like just eating not crappy food, not and to pursue those personal aspirations. And when and how could we do that? For me, the no excuses method I found was a workday lunch.
So can we ask, what did you do prior to this? I mean, are we outing you if you say you didn't like your job?
No,
okay,
not,
what did you do?
Not at all, not at all. I was a research director, actually, for a global publisher for almost 20 years. And this was a wonderful job. I mean, these were smart, talented people. There wasn't anything toxic about my workplace. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, that there wasn't anything bad. It just didn't feel like me. And, you end up at the end of the day thinking, it looks really good on paper, but is this all there is? And, for me, I knew there was more. And again, without the confidence that I found from being a boxer, I don't think I would have had the confidence to make the change that I did, to leave my full-time, comfortable, decently paying job in 2018 to commit myself to writing my book.
Wow. Okay. You have obviously a lot of personal courage. And also, do you have brothers?
I don't. Why do you ask?
Because you went into boxing. I thought that was, I was thinking, gosh, I should have done that. Probably would have made my childhood and early teenhood a lot more interesting and fair. But so you have a publishing background.
I do.
I mean, you have a understanding of publishing, or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the kind of publishing that I did primarily was, I worked in assessment development. So this is really technical publishing. So we would do national studies and then publish that research and help people interpret those kind of test results. But before I did that work, I worked for a literary agency. So for almost 30 years, I've had a little bit of a peek into kind of the backside of the publishing industry, but never. And
the backside, as it were. Yes.
Yeah, right. And interestingly, ever during that time thought about myself as a writer or as an author until I made that shift in 2018.
So, okay. So what prompted you to do that? Was there one thing, or what brought you to that decision? Because that it takes a lot,
It
commitment and courage and
it was
change.
a big pivot for me, and I think at the heart of it was that I as I was in this job that I was kind of falling out of love with, that I was kind of bored, that I was doing well, but I didn't feel like there was a lot more for me to learn. I'm kind of in this holding pattern, and that's not a comfortable place for me. I like pursuing the next thing. I like growth. I'm a curious person. So as I was doing my what should I do with my career next exploration, I found a website, and at the time it was a man, Jonathan Mead, and it's called Paid to Exist, and it's a different website now. But one of the uh, self-exploration questions that he asked was, what kind of change would you like to see in the world? And at the time, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for my intersection of skills and interests, right? I'm looking for something really practical. So this question felt really not helpful to me, not helpful. But it challenged me to, as a literal and practical person, say, well, what would the world look like if it was different? And there were some basic things that I would change. The pace of things would slow down. People would eat a little better. We might take the time to notice what we're eating. The whole world would have a little different kind of energy because we were not always at the mercy of the incoming, and we had an opportunity to produce something ourselves, a way to express ourselves. And the more I thought about this, I thought, well, it's a little bit to do with food and a little bit to do with time, and a little food and time looked a lot like lunch to me. And the more I thought about this idea of a workday lunch and what you could do with it, the potential of 15 minutes of better food, whatever that means for you, and 15 minutes of time to take action on a personal aspiration, the kind of thing that I call a second place dream. That idea I felt was important enough that I wanted to give it every chance in the world to be successful. And I thought that the best vehicle to do that was a book. And I wasn't going to be able to do the kind of job that I wanted to do with it with a full-time job. So I kind of stepped off that cliff in 2018 and said, if this matters, I'm going to do it right. And
Wow.
and here we are.
Okay, so tell us about the book. And do you have a copy of the book with you?
I do.
Just happen to have one there?
Just happen to have it. Yes.
Beautiful.
And I would have to, and I want to give a shout out to my my team. I self-published this book, and that's an adventure on its own. But one of the beautiful things about self-publishing is all of the I was able, unlike in my corporate role, I was able to choose exactly who I wanted to work with. And you don't always get to collaborate in that same way in a corporate environment. But the team I was able to assemble to make this book happen was amazing, because not just I wanted a good book, but I wanted a good book writing experience, and I didn't want to feel at the mercy of other people's creative decisions. I wanted to be informed by people who are really good at what they do to say, here's how we can make it as attractive, as relatable, as much of my voice as possible. And the team that I put together to make this book happen, I just every step of the way it was just a pleasure to work with these folks.
What was the most interesting thing that you learned, or the most valuable thing you learned by self-publishing this book?
I don't know if it was as much about self-publishing, but what I learned from writing the book is that by nature, I'm a doer, and I like to just put my head down and get things done. So when I left my job to write this book, I thought, I'm just going to put my head down for whatever period of time and just get it done and, work on it every day. I'm very disciplined. I mean, from boxing, you learn discipline. I'm a fairly structured person, and writing doesn't work that way. And that will be no surprise to most of the people watching. But to me, it was a big surprise how patient I needed to be, and how important it was to write and then leave it alone and come back to it, and accept that there were days when it just wasn't going to happen as much as I really needed this word count, or I needed this whatever. It just doesn't always work that way. And that was a big lesson for me, to say you need to just let it be what it is. Somebody said, the right book can be like a good cheese. It's going to take some time, right? It doesn't just happen overnight. You're not going to be as happy with the result. And I think that by giving it the time to percolate and to get all the feedback and guidance that I did from all of my readers, it made the book something that I'm really proud of. And it certainly wouldn't have happened if I just put my head down and cranked it out. And you asked if I had brothers, and I don't. I'm an only child, but that also makes me think that I can do everything by myself. And it's not true. You need the artist to really inform the cover design, or I did anyway. And you need the team of editors, the big picture people, and the copy editor. You need all of these people. You need a patient husband who's willing to read this section again and tell me if it really sounds like me, right?
How great is that? Well, it sounds like this was a good experience for you. And it also sounds like this is a passion project. So what are you hoping that people will get out of the book after they read the book?
I want more people to say, I want more people to say out loud, missing out on the life I want is not okay anymore. And by looking at the kind of the method and the mindset that I'm presenting in Box Lunch Lifestyle, that life that you want is not as far out of reach as you might think. So if you think about your typical lunch, so think about your last lunch break. Maybe it was typical, maybe it wasn't typical. But what I've found is that when you look at your last workday lunch experience, so this is a supposed break in the middle of a really hectic time, that has the potential to reflect back to you this little microcosm of lifestyle. It's what we eat on a typical day, and it's what we do on a typical day. How do we spend our time? Are we scrolling? Are we investing in ourselves? Are we paying attention to our environment? These are small things that we get to choose. So by looking at, by seeing lunch this way as this little version of the lifestyle you aspire to, once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. And your next lunch break will show up again and remind you, hey, these are the choices that you're making. And if you're happy with it, it's fantastic. But if you're not, or you want something different, that's the time and the place to choose.
Well, that's such a great thing. And that what you said before about being at the mercy of the incoming, I actually wrote it down because that's so true. You're so reactive as opposed to being proactive so much of the time. So can you give us a couple of tips to finish up? Can you give us a couple of tips for people out there who are watching, who are interested in saying, okay, I want to take this first step. I'd like to try this. Maybe a couple of tips on how to better use their lunch hour that's easier, their lunchtime period.
Yeah. So I think that, and this will sound really obvious and it will sound easy, but it may be more of a challenge than people expect. Right now, if you have access to your calendar, wherever you are, put your lunch break on your calendar. Even if you typically, I always stop at 1, or I always have this time, or this is, we have that intention, but put it on your calendar. And it's a promise that you're making to yourself to say, this is what I'm going to defend this time for me, whatever that is. I'm going to eat what I want to eat, something that I made for myself. I'm going to do something just for me. But that commitment on your calendar, it's a promise to yourself. And it's also the first kind of semi-public opportunity to say to the people around you, I'm going to do some stuff for me. And this will be time that I will defend and would prefer not to be, interrupted unless the house is on fire or somebody's hurt. I mean, things will not go as planned. And maybe that's the other tip, is that I would encourage people who are, like anybody who sees themselves as a wannabe habit changer. The other nice thing about a workday lunch break is that it's not every single day for the rest of your life. And I don't know about you, but um, there are some benefits in some cases for breaking the chain or trying to not break the chain. But for a lot of us, that time when the chain gets broken, and it does, it doesn't mean failure. So the thing about the workday lunch break is that it's work days. These are these kinds of days. Weekend days are something different. Like the birthday party days, the vacation days, these are different kinds of days. So I would encourage people to start looking for opportunities to show themselves a little mercy when they're trying to make these changes, because it's not easy to push back against a culture that always wants our time, or always wants us to be dieting, or always wants us to be doing something more. But it matters, and that kind of practice is healthy too.
I love the idea. I love the concept, and I think writers as a group tend to sublimate everything to their writing, including themselves. Sublimate
Oh,
their grief
interesting.
and sacrifice. So I think that a book like this, everybody's searching for balance, particularly when you're chasing the creative muse. So I think this would be a great book, also for everyone, but particularly writers or people in a profession where that's a tendency, a strong tendency. So so we have writers out there who I know are searching for balance. So where can they find your book?
My website, you can go to boxlunchlifestyle.com, and everything you need to know about the book and about the method is there. In fact, if you are curious, or if you know someone who is curious, so for example, writers, when you tell people you're a writer and someone says, oh, I would love to do that, but I could never do that. If they took 15 minutes tomorrow at their workday lunch break to write something, they are a writer. Maybe not the same way you're a writer, but they could adopt that identity and commit and actually try it and see it's for them. So if you know other people who would be curious to say, what would it take for me to be a writer? Go to boxlunchlifestyle.com/start here. There's a download, everything you need at your fingertips for free. Get them started and see what happens next.
Well, great. Well, thank you for sharing all your research and your hard-earned life lessons with everyone. I know I'm excited and interested to pick it up. Like I said, I wrote that down, being at the mercy of the incoming. So we wish you a lot of luck with continued success and luck with the book. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for being here.
Thank you.
And to everybody else, thank you for joining us this morning. If you enjoyed this interview and you'd like to share it, it's available on Facebook, and will also be available on our YouTube channel, which is SCWA Writers Online. And if you are looking for more interviews like this, you can also find them there. So until next week, please take care. Think about what you're going to eat and what you're going to do at lunch. Be intentional. And we will see you next time on the SCWA Hump Day Book Tour.